Hi everyone, welcome to Wednesday's ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson alongside Mark Ogden and Shaka Hislop. Today on the show, we'll be looking back at yesterday's Champions League semi-final second leg tie between Paris Saint-Germain and Borussia Dortmund. And we will also preview today's game between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. We'll also be having a little bit of fun with a game of what if. We'll be talking about Manchester United, don't we always? Well, there's plenty to talk about with Oggy and with Shaka, but let's get to it. I want to start with you, Shaq. I didn't expect Paris Saint-Germain to lose the game. They did, and they lost the tie by 2-0. What's the bigger narrative here? Borussia Dortmund back in a Champions League final, or Paris Saint-Germain not?
I would say the bigger narrative is Borussia Dortmund back in the Champions League final, because I think listen. Call me a romantic or whatever you want to be. The positive side to this story is the one for me that's the more attractive. Now, don't get me wrong. I can certainly talk about the negative and PSG and all that comes along with it for as long as you like, Mark. But I think right now, when you think about Dortmund, you think about how unlikely it is. That's a team that right now sitting fifth in the Bundesliga. Excuse me, whose league form has been anything but suggesting that they are amongst Europe's elite in a final. You have to celebrate that. Listen, 3 weeks ago, we were talking about whether PSG should be still in a job come the end of the season. And now we're talking about Edin Terzic leading his Borussia Dortmund team out in the Champions League final. I mean, 3 weeks is a long time in football indeed.
Okay, Augie, Paris Saint-Germain. Serial failures. 2020, they got to the final, didn't win it. They spent so much money. Look at some of the players that they've had. All of them brought to the club to try and win the Champions League. Ligue 1, that's by the by. That's expected. It's about winning the Champions League. They've not done it. What's happened? Why have they not done it?
Well, I think in the early days, those players that you're showing there, there's some amazing players. And initially, they built a team of superstars rather than a team, And I think it also coincided with that era of the great Real Madrid team that won 3 on the bounce, and then Liverpool and Man City, came to prominence. So I think they've been unfortunate in the sense that their big team was built around the same time as some great teams, but they've never really had that cohesiveness to win and beat the top teams when it's mattered. We all remember the hammering they had at the Nou Camp that time when I think lost 6-1 in the second leg. So the times never really worked for them. But this time around, I never really saw this in them this season. I thought that I saw them in the group stage almost get knocked out by Newcastle. I mean, Shaka remember this being an ex-Newcastle player, but it was a deep in stoppage time when they had a very dodgy penalty in the Parc de France, which saved them from, I think, going out that night against Newcastle. So they've been very lucky to get to this point. But with such a young team, this came way ahead of time, and people started to think, well, this team isn't good enough, but we've still got Mbappe. With Mbappe in the team, you never know. And I was beginning to think that this was going to be their year. I thought, Mbappe's leaving, what a fairy tale that would be. A kind of fairy tale, an expensive fairy tale. What a fairy tale it would be. Kylian Mbappe leaves PSG with the Champions League trophy in the summer that Paris hosts the Olympics. It all seems to be coming together. But that's the romantic side of me, and it shows that it's totally wrong. So, they've not made it because their best team coincided with some great teams. And right now they've been outdone by a proper team of no superstars against a team that's got one superstar and 2 young players. And, last night you were watching PSG and there's so many that are at that level. Gonçalo Ramos missed a lot of chances. It just felt like they lacked a bit. Ousmane Dembele is always flattered to deceive. They've got a lot of nearly players, PSG, and a superstar. And I think that over the years, they've had too many nearly players, too many superstars, but not enough proper team players that Dortmund have got.
You've both mentioned being romantics, which is lovely. It's not quite Valentine's Day, and I understand that. Shaka, speaking of romantic tales in football, do you think it's a good thing that the 5th best team in Germany right now are through to the final and the best team in France are out of the Champions League? Or do we look at the Champions League and we say, you know what, it's not the European Cup back in the day when it was the champions, and this is what it is now, because Dortmund have gone from 2013, when they were so unfortunate to lose out late on at Wembley against Bayern Munich, and now they find themselves back in the final as the 5th best team. So For me, I'm all for it. Are you?
It is what it is. You earn the right to play in a Champions League final. Dortmund have done that. Their league position has absolutely no bearing on this, and so whether it's a good or bad thing, I am totally indifferent. But this is new. When Liverpool won the Champions League, I'm pretty sure they finished fifth. When Chelsea won the Champions League, they were fifth as well. If memory serves correctly. So this isn't some kind of new phenomenon. I mean, when Liverpool and Chelsea won it, it was celebrated as the Premier League being so strong. Now, to try to paint the team fifth in Bundesliga, in any other light, I just think is disingenuous. Dortmund came through a difficult group, same group that PSG and Newcastle were in, that Ogden mentioned. And while, yes, in terms of the semi-final into final draw, was it quarterfinal to finals? It was the easier half of that draw. You take what luck that affords you, and you make the most of it. And I think credit to Borussia Dortmund, because I don't think anybody, well, maybe a couple of exceptions that make the rule, saw Dortmund getting to a final. I'm not sure how many Dortmund players saw themselves getting to a final, but credit to them for incredible performances, particularly against PSG when nobody thought they could do it.
Okay, I want to bring up this fifth in the table from the perspective of Eintracht Frankfurt fans, and people are like, what are you talking about that for? Well, they are sixth in the table. And if Borussia Dortmund win the Champions League and finish fifth, they don't get above RB Leipzig, then Germany will have 6 teams in the Champions League next season. So for a nation as a whole, from the national side to Bayern Munich's not demise this season, they've just run into a buzzsaw. You kind of got to look at German football now in a far better light than a lot of people were looking at it, both domestically and internationally, just a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, Gracias tested that will be in the Euros this summer, because the national teams had a terrible 2 or 3 years and some terrible times at tournaments recently. But I'd imagine they'll go into the Euros buoyant on the back of the success of their domestic teams. Leverkusen, as we know, an amazing season. They could win a treble without losing a game. That'll be unprecedented, I think. Bayern Munich have been disappointed, but they could win the Champions League, and obviously Dortmund to get into the final. So German football seems to be in strong health. But ultimately, does this say that the Bundesliga is a strong league, or does it say that the other leagues are, squeezing the pips dry? I guess I'm talking the Premier League. I mean, are we saying that the top 4 or 5 teams in Germany are better than the Premier League top 4 or 5? Well, that's debatable, but I guess in Germany the teams have it easier, I guess, to get to where they want to be, because their leagues are more conducive to success. That their players have a winter break. Their players don't play as many games, so when they get to this stage of the season, the business end of the season, they're more able to perform at their best. Whereas you look at the Premier League teams, I guess that they're running on empty at this stage of the season. Look at Liverpool; they were flying about a month ago. Now they can't get a win. So I guess the Bundesliga has a lot of positives, and one of the positives is the way that it makes sure that its top teams are able to compete at the highest level right at the end of the season. So that the whole package of the Bundesliga is very strong, because it's not just the quality on the pitch, it's the quality of the pitch and how they look after their players, how they look after their teams, and how they ensure that when they get to this stage of the season, they can still compete and go strong and win the big trophies.
Shaka, back in 2012, Borussia Mönchengladbach sold Marco Reus to Borussia Dortmund. 12 months later, he was at Wembley in a Champions League final. He's still at Borussia Dortmund. He's now 34. He came very close to winning in 2013, but that late Bayern goal gave them a 2-1 win. If he wins the Champions League with Borussia Dortmund, could he be tempted, even though he might think he's got a little bit left in the legs, could he be tempted to say, you know what, life doesn't get any better than this, and just say, I'm done?
Yeah, absolutely. What a way to sign off that would be for Marco Reus. Incredible servant to Borussia Dortmund, as you mentioned, incredible footballer. He really was. And as good a footballer as he was, you just wonder about the injuries and the timings of them, and how that impacted how maybe his own reputation and how he'll be remembered. for those who saw anything of Dortmund over the years, for those who followed German football, even a little bit, I don't think Marco Reus's abilities have been underappreciated. Incredible footballer, and there aren't many opportunities to sign off in that kind of way, to sign off at an absolute high, and this certainly would be one for Marco Reus in a season where, again, and as per this discussion goes, it's full of romantics. How good would that be for Marco Reus? But in all seriousness, it's a decision he makes. He'll be tempted, I'm sure, but then, knowing the footballer's mindset, we also want to give it one more go. If I can do this for Borussia Dortmund, if I can get to this level of the game, maybe I can just churn one more season out, either here at Dortmund, or maybe I take a step down to a club who's playing maybe in Bundesliga, but the expectations are a little bit lower, and be a part of that setup. Saying goodbye to the game is hard for every footballer. As Peter Beardsley once said to me back in the Newcastle days, you're a very long time retired, so you keep playing until you can't play anymore.
Or you could pull the gloves back on and go to Grenada for their 100th anniversary and show how good you once were.
That's an option reserved for minority few, Mark.
Because you're just back from there, and your Instagram it has shown that just because you're retired doesn't mean to say you can't have plenty of fun still.
Oh, I'm having fun. Don't worry about that. It was fun.
What goes on tour stays on tour, yeah?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Let's move swiftly on. I want to touch back on Paris Saint-Germain, Augie, because Mbappe looks like he's heading to Real Madrid. Where does this defeat leave them? About to lose their star player, Luis Enrique, linked with a move back to Barcelona next summer at the end of his PSG contract. Is that it for PSG? Are they going to have to start from scratch again and go down a different route, not that of superstars, and maybe look for another way to try and win the Champions League? What do you think?
Well, I think they've already started doing that. I think when Neymar and Lionel Messi left a year ago, that signaled the start of a new policy. They brought in players from all over Europe, the young French players, I guess, that were going to be the bedrock of the new PSG. Obviously, Mbappe's gone. They're not going to get a fee for him, so which means it's going to be difficult for them to build again. But if you think about France, France produced so many great players. They've won the World Cup twice. They're a team that is always competitive at the highest level, but their club teams don't succeed. I think only one French team has won the Champions League. That was Marseille over 30 years ago. But if PSG want to be successful at that level, they just need to be the destination for all the best young French talent, because I don't think the game's superstars are going to go to PSG anymore. I think they're going to go to the Premier League, to La Liga, because they know that Ligue 1 is not competitive enough to kind of satisfy their ambitions. I think, they want to be, if they're good enough to play for PSG, they're good enough to play for Barcelona, Real Madrid, and all the top sides of the Premier League. So I think PSG, what they have to do now is be the team in France that gets all those great young French players and develops them to the point where they become, I guess, a club side in the image of France. And if you can do that, you've got a chance of winning everything, because we know that France produce, probably more top players than any other nation. I guess only Brazil and Argentina come close to France when it comes to producing global superstars. So the talent's there. PSG maybe just need to go down the route of picking local talent, homegrown talent, rather than buying superstars. But I don't think that option is going to be available anymore. I don't think the superstars will go there, because they've seen the PSG project doesn't work in that form. So they'll go to other clubs in Europe and leave PSG maybe to pick up the best young French talent and make them a team of superstars in their own right.
As someone who covers the Manchester beat, two players who used to play for Manchester United, one permanently and one who's on loan at Dortmund, Marcel Sabitzer and Jadon Sancho, are now preparing for a Champions League final. Justin Bieber's song, Is It Too Late to Say I'm Sorry? Just as well it isn't for Jadon Sancho in deciding that he didn't want to do so, because he could have been at Selhurst Park on Monday night instead of playing against Paris Saint-Germain on Tuesday. So how can we link this with Manchester United as far as decisions made? They bring in the likes of Sofiane Amrabat to replace the likes of Sabitzer. It just seems all over the place. the Manchester United recruitment here. Meanwhile, a former player and a loanee are both preparing for a Champions League final. Oggy, how will that sit at Old Trafford?
Well, it's certainly been a question that's been doing the rounds in Manchester for the last 2 or 3 days as to how, Sancho's taken the headlines because Sancho, is a Man United player and he's not playing for Man United. United are ending their season at Wembley in the FA Cup final, but Jadon Sancho's ended it in the Champions League final at Wembley. So who would you rather be? I would probably rather be Jadon Sancho because you've got a fighting chance of winning the Champions League. I'm not quite sure that would have been the case in the FA Cup final against Man City, but let's just take Sabitzer first. Sabitzer arrived on loan from Bayern Munich last the January transfer window last season. He did really well. He brought athleticism, he brought professionalism, he brought reliability, energy box to box, but he got injured towards the end of the season and missed the cup final. And United felt that they could find a better option in the market. That summer and signed Sabitzer on a permanent deal for around, I think, 12, 14 million pounds. A really good deal at the time, but they decided otherwise. They signed Mason Mount. And then when they realised they were desperate towards the end of the window, they signed Sofian Amrabat on loan from Fiorentina. And let's be honest, both players have been a disaster. Mount has maybe got a future, maybe give Mount a chance when he gets fit, but Amrabat's been awful. So Sabitzer has been outstanding for Dortmund in their run to the final, and he showed against PSG in both legs what United have missed this season. That kind of energy in midfield, that youth, it's not youthful energy, but just reliability that Casemiro hasn't got. And, Kobe Mainoo will be crying out for somebody like Marcel Sabitzer alongside him. But that ship sailed. Sancho's a different matter. Obviously, Sancho was kind of frozen out by Ten Hag for not apologising for his social media post back in September. Now, I look at the way Jurgen Klopp dealt with Mo Salah last week. When Salah had that little strop on the touchline, and it was very highly publicised. And Salah came out and said there will be fire if I talk about it. So a clear kind of defiance of his manager. But Klopp dealt with it brilliantly. He dealt with it. He said it's all sorted out. We've dealt with it. So we're taking Salah inside, had a conversation, moved on. Ten Hag put his heels in and left the situation where Sancho was training on his own for 3 months. He's gone to Borussia Dortmund, and Edin Terzic has rehabilitated him. He's made him a star performer in the Champions League semi-finals. So for me, this is all on Erik Ten Hag. This is Ten Hag's poor management of Jadon Sancho. He's mismanaged the situation. But you can argue that he's mismanaged Marcus Rashford this season. He maybe mismanaged Cristiano Ronaldo last season. He's mismanaged other players. And I think, Jadon Sancho should be a Man United player now. But as it stands, he probably won't want to go back to Man United. Why would he want to go back to Man United with or without Ten Hag? Because United right now are in the mess. Jadon Sancho is looking at Anthony on the right, thinking, why am I not playing ahead of Anthony? And Ten Hag's favoured Anthony. So Sancho has been a big winner in this scenario. Ten Hag's been a big loser. And I think Jadon Sancho might walk away with the Champions League winners' medal this season. I think there's no way I'm going back to Manchester United. He can think better. He can aim higher than that.
Shaka, Jadon Sancho and his Dortmund teammates would prefer Bayern over Real Madrid, looking for revenge for 2013 and feel they've got a better chance of victory, or they might prefer not a domestic fixture in a Champions League final again and maybe have a chance at the best team in Europe?
I'm not. Well, first of all, I don't think anybody at Dortmund cares who's their opponent in the final. They're happy to be there, and whoever it may be, bring that game on. But obviously, Dortmund, as a team, would know Bayern individually and their threat collectively better maybe than they know Madrid. Not that Madrid should be a secret to anybody in football, but they'd have that experience of going, standing shoulder to shoulder on the same park with Bayern Munich and kind of understand that dynamic. I think also, just in terms of who the opponent may be, they both come into this with a different mindset. Bayern's entire season hinges on winning the Champions League, given what's happened domestically for them. For Real Madrid, they're Spanish champions. They are playing with confidence. We know what the Champions League and Real Madrid and how those two kind of go hand in hand. And so which is the bigger psychological threat, if I can call it that, in terms of the two possible opponents and their mentality coming into this one? Again, I'm not sure that that's clear cut either. Which of those two different perspectives you prefer to come up against? So Sabitzer in his post-game interview was saying he really didn't care, and I absolutely believe him and everybody else in that Dortmund changing room feels exactly the same.
Augie, when Dortmund went to Munich, went to Bavaria at the end of March in the last Der Klassiker that we saw, they ran it pretty comfortable 2-0 winners. The fact that Shaka is saying that the players aren't really fussed, do you think there are some that want revenge for 2013 in the knowledge that, hey, we've got their number, we beat them recently, and we don't fear this Bayern Munich?
I guess I obviously talk about Hummels and Royce, and obviously Hummels went to Bayern and won the Champions League there, so I suppose he's kind of buried that one a little bit. But for me, if I was a Dortmund player, I wouldn't want to face Bayern Munich because I think, obviously, Bayern won, I think, 4-0 at Dortmund this season, so Bayern are the big bad wolf of German football, aren't they? And Dortmund have had so many disappointments against Bayern Munich over the years. You know, primarily the Champions League final back in 2013. So if you're in a Champions League final, if you're in a European final, you don't want it to be a team from your league. It takes something away from it, I think. And I think Real Madrid, they are vulnerable. I mean, so are Bayern Munich, but I think if you're a Dortmund fan or a Dortmund player, you don't want that pressure of facing a domestic rival, especially one that's as dominant over the years as Bayern Munich. So I think get Bayern Munich out of the way. You know, would you want to face Bayern Munich with Harry Kane at Wembley, Harry Kane and home turf, desperate to win the Champions League in London? Let's just kind of put it to one side. Let's if I was Dortmund, I'd take Real Madrid because it'd be a better occasion, a better spectacle. It's Real Madrid. It's the biggest team in the Champions League. It's the most successful team. I think they've got a good chance of beating Real Madrid, so I'd go for Real.
Shaq, Jude Bellingham at Wembley. I know Augie's spoken about the likes of Jadon Sancho, who we know is going to be there. He's mentioned Harry Kane, who wants to be there. Jude Bellingham's just been brilliant this season for Real Madrid. What a platform that would be for a 20-year-old who acts like he's been in the game for a decade at the highest level. But it won't be easy. What's your prediction for Real Madrid against Bayern Munich in the second leg later today?
I think Real Madrid get the job done. I just again feel that Real Madrid and this competition, just in general, I don't know what it is about them. You can look around the squad and try to find holes in it, and oftentimes you do. But as soon as they take the park on Champions League nights, it's just same old Real Madrid. And again, as much as I said previously that Bayern, and which I think is still every bit as valid, Bayern's entire season is hinging on them winning the Champions League. This is clearly a flawed Bayern team, in my opinion. Thomas Tuchel on his way out. I'm not sure how that dynamic plays off for Bayern, especially as we come closer and closer to the end of the season. So right now, I think Real Madrid get the job done in the semi-final. Real Dortmund final in a one-off, and again, if that's the matchup, I go Real Madrid again. But I think it's going to be it may be a far tougher test than what certainly league forms for each club certainly suggests. The Dortmund that play in the Bundesliga, somehow it's the same name, same numbers on the backs of the shirts, but it's a totally different team that plays in the Champions League.
Okay, who you got later today?
Yeah, I've got to go with Shaka. I think I've been at the Bernabeu. It's an amazing stadium. It's one of those things a bit like Anfield where the home side's got such an advantage. The crowd just know what to do, just like the players do. And I think Real Madrid will overcome Bayern Munich tonight. I think there's going to be goals. I think it could end up 3-2 or something like that because I think both sides are vulnerable defensively but great going forward. So I'm going to go for Real Madrid 3-2 tonight. So it's going to be a heavy scoring second leg.
Okay, I'm going to finish off with a game of what if. And I want to keep on the Champions League theme. And the whole purpose of this is, what if something that we think is going to happen doesn't actually happen? What would happen as a result if it doesn't happen? Shaka, what if Kylian Mbappe doesn't go to Real Madrid next season? Where does he go?
If Kylian Mbappe does not go to Real Madrid, I think he stays at PSG. I think it's Real Madrid or bust at this point. I'm not sure who else can afford him, who else maybe has figured out what role he plays in their squad. And if it's not Real Madrid, it's Man City. I'm going to go Real Madrid, PSG second choice, Man City third, nobody else in the reckoning.
Portsmouth. West Ham, Trinidad and Tobago.
Come to Grenada. If it's not one of those three, he's going to come to Grenada and play Legends games.
Yeah, hang out with Brent Sancho and just have a real good time in the Caribbean.
Can I chuck a left field one in here?
Of course.
I think, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I think one club that should go for Mbappe is Arsenal, because they've got a platform of being the biggest club in London. London is a great city that all the players want to live in. They need a striker. If they win the Premier League, they have to take another step forward. And I think they've got a great history of superstar French players. Thierry Henry, Arsene Wenger has rebuilt that club over the years to make them such a massive club. Certainly in France, I think Mbappe to Arsenal, as crazy as it sounds, no fee. You could justify the wages because he's such a superstar. I think that if Arsenal have got the ambition that we think they have, they go for Kylian Mbappe.
And he could use some of his signing on fee to maybe get better Wi-Fi reception or faster broadband as well to help Oggy out. I thought it was me and these Bluetooth. I was like, okay, it's happened too often now. It's the loudspeaker. I understand that. Sticking on the kind of Kylian Mbappe, Real Madrid Spanish theme, Shaka, what if Xavi's decision to stay at Barca is actually a mistake?
Yeah, and that's a big question. Barcelona certainly were a whole lot better when Xavi wasn't going to be their manager next season, both at the start of the season and the finish of this one, when it seems that his future was secure. All of a sudden, Barcelona are finding this game harder than they did in the middle bit. Listen, I didn't understand his decision to the reversal to announce that he's staying. I'm not sure what changed in between him saying that he'd had enough and he couldn't deal, or it was exhausting dealing with the machinery that comes with being Barcelona manager. I'm not sure what changed. And all those things that he complained about are going to be right there to start next season. So it made no sense then. It makes no sense now. I mean, I still think it was a mistake, one way or the other, for him to reverse his decision as he did.
Okay, Oggy, your what if we go to the final day of the Premier League season, City have drawn one of their next two, and Arsenal win theirs, along with City winning the other. So we go into the final day level on points. What if that happens and the goal difference is 6 in favour of Arsenal? Could you see a title swing with a 6-goal swing somehow?
Well, you've got to factor in that Arsenal playing Everton at home, so it might be more than 6. But if any team is capable of scoring 6, 7 or 8 goals, it's Man City. Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne, Julian Alvarez, Phil Foden. I think you could definitely put your money on City doing that, and especially with West Ham as they are right now. David Moyes is leaving. There's a bit of, unhappiness at the club. They've had a couple of heavy defeats. I definitely wouldn't rule out Man City putting 6, 7, or even 8 past West Ham if they have to do it.
Okay, I would love to give you this last one, but I think it's only fair that we give it to Shaka. What if Cristiano Ronaldo's first ever Premier League goal that he scored wasn't conceded by, Shaka Hislop? What if he'd saved that? Cross comes shot. Might all have been so different. He might have been Anthony, or he might have been Jadon Sancho if he hadn't apologised. If you'd saved that, it might all have been so different, Shaq.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking, Mark. If I through understanding the big picture around football, didn't through the goodness of my heart allow that free kick to go in, Cristiano Ronaldo might have been frustrated and had to go to Dortmund on loan or something like that. Who knows? That's a big problem, Mark.
You say you maybe could have got Steven Gerrard. We're just bringing up all the bad things. I know we're about to close.
Cheers. Let's just relive every single goal I've conceded.
Yeah. What were you closer to? Gerrard in the cup final in 2006 or Ronaldo's free kick?
I was closer to Ronaldo's free kick. This free kick, he whipped it in the near post, and what did me was Paul Scholes made a near post run. Nigel Quasi followed him in, and both players narrowly missed the ball. And I played for the touch. Which obviously neither of them got. And the ball kind of sailed in or went into the far post. Steven Gerrard's was just I was just a long way away from that. I don't think I was getting that at 37 years old as I was in 2006. I felt that had that been 6 years earlier, I would have. I believe I would have gotten to that 6 years earlier. But at 37, I'm well past my sell-by date.
Well, you could have rewritten history. Real Madrid or
This
Bayern
is
Munich,
unfair,
one of
by the
them
way.
trying to write. What are you saying? I'm trying to wrap this up. What?
This is unfair on Shaka. You know, listen, that, for me, he's conceded Ronaldo's first goal. That is a badge of honour. Steven Gerrard's goal in the FA Cup final. That was a superstar goal. That's one of the most iconic cup final goals I've ever seen. I think he also considered Eric Cantona's goal in the game at St James's Park back in, was it 96, which is again
no,
an iconic moment.
That was Pavlicek check. That was Pavlicek check.
I've let you.
That wasn't him.
Right. These are poster goals, so fair play to Shaka who's there.
Okay.
Cheers, Mark.
Okay, thank you. I'm going off to enjoy the Real Madrid Bayern second leg. Shaka's off to look at pictures from Grenada. And you stop trying to tap into your neighbour's Wi-Fi and get a proper reception next time we speak, Oggy. Thank you all for your company.
I'm back to relive every goal I've conceded in my career. All 6,341.
I should have been out 2 minutes ago. I'm sorry, Rob. We'll do it all again on Friday. ESPN FC Live every night. They know how to get it done because their Wi-Fi is good. Bye for now.